The Warring States, when China was 7 hungry wolves. Imagine a land broken into 7 powerful kingdoms, each one sharpening its swords, forging new weapons, and dreaming of ruling all under heaven. This was the Warring States period, one of the most dramatic and violent ages in Chinese history. The old authority of the Zhou kings had collapsed. Their titles meant nothing. Real power belonged to the great states. Qin in the west, Chu in the south, Qi in the east, Yan in the northeast, Han, Zhao, and Wei in the central plains. People at the time called them the 7 heroes, but the truth is they were more like 7 hungry wolves, constantly testing each other's strength. A revolution in warfare. This era wasn't just fighting, it was innovation. Iron replaced bronze. Armies grew from noble chariots to massive infantry formations. Crossbows became common and deadly. Instead of aristocrats dominating battles, common soldiers became the backbone of war. A farmer could now rise by skill, not by birth. A revolution in government. To survive, every state had to change. They created new bureaucracies, hired talented advisors, and introduced strict laws. Even a poor man could become a high-ranking official, if he was smart and loyal. This is when philosophers like Confucius, Mencius, Mozi, and Xuanzi shaped ideas that would influence China for centuries. And in the far west, one state was quietly becoming more disciplined, more efficient, and more terrifying: Qin. Qin's rise, the wolf in iron armor. Qin began as a rough frontier kingdom, looked down upon by others. But that changed under a brilliant and ruthless minister named Xiangyang. He introduced strict laws, rewarded farming and military service, and punished laziness. Qin became a machine, cold, efficient, unstoppable. By the time of King Jing I, who would later become Qin Shi Huang I, the first emperor, Qin was ready to strike. The Qin conquest, how one kingdom devoured 6 others. When the warring states had exhausted themselves after centuries of battle, Qin stood ready. It wasn't the biggest or the richest, but it was the most disciplined, the most aggressive, and the most willing to reshape society for war. At the center of it all was King Jing I, a ruler who believed destiny had chosen him to unite all under heaven. But Qin did not win by luck, it won with strategy, speed, and ruthlessness. 1. Han, the first to fall, 230 BCE. Han was small and trapped between stronger neighbors. Qin's armies surrounded it like a tightening fist. With no mountains or strongholds to protect it, Han collapsed quickly. For Qin, this was just the warm-up. 2. Zhao, the hardest battlefield, 228 BCE. Zhao had brave soldiers and a long tradition of warfare. But decades earlier, they suffered a disastrous defeat at the Battle of Chongping, where Qin killed or buried alive hundreds of thousands of Zhao soldiers. That wound never healed. When Qin returned with new armies, Zhao was already weakened. The city of Handan resisted fiercely, but eventually Qin stormed it, ending Zhao's pride forever. 3. Wei, crushed by siege towers, 225 BCE. Wei's capital, Daliang, was protected by giant walls and a massive river system. Qin solved this by doing something shocking: they diverted the Yellow River, flooding the city from the outside. Daliang turned into a drowning fortress, and Wei surrendered. 4. Chu, the mighty giant that almost won, 223 BCE. Chu was the largest of all the states, huge lands, deep forests, and powerful armies. Qin attacked once and lost. But Qin didn't give up. They brought in a tougher general, Wang Jian I, a man so cautious he refused to march until he had an army of 600,000. With overwhelming force, Wang Jian crushed Chu in a brutal campaign. Once Chu fell, the path to unifying China became clear. 5. Yan, the kingdom that tried to kill the Qin king, 222 BCE. Yan knew it was too weak to win by force, so it tried something desperate: a famous assassin named Jiang Ke attempted to kill King Jing I. He failed. When Qin came north with its armies, Yan collapsed within a year. 6. Qi, the last lonely kingdom, 221 BCE. Qi watched the war from the sidelines, hoping Qin and Chu would destroy each other. But when Chu fell, Qi stood alone. Qi marched in with almost no resistance. Qi surrendered peacefully, and with that surrender, the age of the warring states ended. The birth of the First Empire. With all rivals defeated, King Jing I declared himself, Qin Shi Huang I, the first emperor of China. Under him, China would experience a unified writing system, standardized weights and measures, massive roads, the first version of the Great Wall, and a government strong enough to rule a continent. But his rule also brought fear, harsh laws, and the burning of books. Qin Shi Huang I, the emperor who tried to control everything. When King Jing I unified China and declared himself Qin Shi Huang I, he believed he was doing something no human had ever done, and that he had the right to reshape the world exactly as he wished. He didn't call himself king anymore. He used a new title, Huangdi, meaning August Emperor. A word that carried divine weight. And the moment he took power, he began to transform China at a speed that shocked everyone. His reforms, building an empire from scratch. 1. One writing system. Before Qin, every region wrote characters slightly differently. He forced them all into one standardized script, the ancestor of the characters used today. For the first time, a person from the far north could read something written in the far south. 2. One weight, one measure, one currency. Qin Shi Huang hated inconsistency. He wanted a farmer, a merchant, and a general to use the exact same bronze weights, measuring jars, cart axles, copper coins shaped like round discs with square holes. This made trade explode. It also made taxation easier, which was exactly what he wanted. 3. Roads, the arteries of an empire. He built enormous straight roads, some so wide 6 horses could ride side by side. At all intersections, he ordered tall stone markers telling travelers the exact distance to the capital. This wasn't just for trade, it let Qin armies move with terrifying speed. 4. The first version of the Great Wall. Instead of one giant wall, he connected old border walls into a long defensive frontier. But the price was horrific. Hundreds of thousands of laborers were forced to work in deadly conditions. Many died and were buried inside the foundations. This became one of the darkest symbols of his reign. His personality, brilliant, obsessive, and terrified of death. Qin Shi Huang was a man of contradictions. He was brilliant. He understood power, psychology, and strategy. He saw that unity required not just conquest, but standardization. He was paranoid. He survived assassins, betrayals, and conspiracies. After the Jing coup assassination attempt, he refused to trust anyone fully. He was perfectionist. He wanted everything controlled. Books, roads, measurements, even people's thoughts. He feared death more than anything. This fear shaped his final years. Burning of books and killing of scholars. Qin Shi Huang believed dangerous ideas would weaken his rule. So he ordered historical texts burned, philosophy books destroyed, scholars who resisted punished harshly. Legalist writings were allowed, because they supported strict, centralized control. Whether the scholars buried alive happened exactly as described is debated, but what is clear is that his rule became increasingly oppressive. His obsession with immortality. As he aged, his fear of death grew stronger. He sent expeditions to search for magical islands. He drank potions made by alchemists, ironically, many contained mercury, slowly poisoning him. His greatest attempt at immortality was his massive underground tomb, protected by the thousands of terracotta warriors. The tomb remains sealed to this day. The fall, how an empire collapsed in just 3 years. Qin Shi Huang built a system strong enough to conquer China, but too rigid for survival. When he died on a journey far from the capital, officials panicked. The powerful eunuch Zhao Gao and the Prime Minister Li Si hid the news, forged orders, and placed his youngest son Hu Hai II on the throne. Hu Hai II was not a leader. He was controlled by Zhao Gao, who ruled through terror and paranoia. Taxes increased. Forced labor continued. Rebellions erupted everywhere. Among these rebels rose a peasant named Liu Bang I, and a brilliant but ruthless general named Xiang Yu. What started as local uprisings turned into full-scale war. In just 3 years after Qin Shi Huang's death, the mighty Qin dynasty collapsed. Hu Hai II was forced to commit suicide. Zhao Gao was assassinated. The Qin Empire shattered. And from the ashes rose a new dynasty, the Han, led by Liu Bang I.